Good afternoon, and depending on where you are joining us from, good morning, and for a few of you, good very early morning. My name is Mia Badib, and I will be your MC this webinar. It is indeed an honor to present today's event, 300 Years of Women's Rights Literary Activism Around the World, highlighting Mexico, Indonesia, and France. Throughout history, women have made extraordinary contributions to society through their writings. Today, we are remembering and commemorating the works of three prolific women, Raden Ajeng Kartini, Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz, and Olympe de Gouges. They were early pioneers in women's rights activism. Today in Indonesia, we are celebrating Kartini Day, the day of Raden Ajeng Kartini's birthday. It falls every 21st of April. It is indeed a moment for Indonesian women and girls to remember the writings and struggles of R.A. Kartini in fighting for gender equality. We hope today will be one of much inspiration, sharing, and learning, so there is no better time to commemorate the lives and works of these women. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Embassy of Mexico in Indonesia and the Embassy of France in Indonesia, in partnership with Universitas Indonesia, the University of the Cloister of Sor Juana, and UN Women Indonesia. We have an exciting lineup of distinguished speakers from around the world joining us today to discuss and expand on the lives and works of the women we are highlighting today, as well as a selection of poetry readings. Without further ado, let's begin. To start, we have several welcoming remarks from our host. Please welcome His Excellency Armando G. Alvarez, the Ambassador of Mexico to Indonesia. Your Excellency, over to you.
Selamat siang, teman-teman. Welcome to the seminar 300 Years of Women's Rights Literary Activism Around the World, with the participation of experts from Indonesia, France, and Mexico. The road for women's rights has been long and winding. Today, we honor three distinguished female writers who, through literature, contributed to advance the situation of women. Back in the 17th century, in colonial Mexico, a poet and writer nun, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, harshly questioned the role of women in society and demanded her right to education and knowledge. She did it in such a masterful way that she has become one of the more renowned writers in the entire Spanish-speaking world. Later on, in late 18th century, the French playwright and political activist Olympe de Gouges demanded voice and visibility for women and wrote a famous Declaration of the Rights of Women and of the Female Citizen. In the 19th century, in Java, Raden Ajeng Kartini, through her letters and writings, became one of the pioneers of thoughts and ideas in the struggle for women's situation improvement, particularly their emancipation. That is why today, her birthday, April 21st, is known in Indonesia as Hari Kartini. In this context, the embassies of France and Mexico, countries that have declared a feminist foreign policy, have joined efforts with Indonesian institutions to promote a reflection on the role of women and pay a tribute to three unique women, Sor Juana, Olympe de Gouges, and Ibu Kartini. I want to thank Universitas Indonesia and the University of the Cloister of Sor Juana for their invaluable support of this event. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to all the speakers for their time and enthusiasm to participate in this event. Terima kasih dan selamat menikmati pertunjukan.
Thank you very much for your remark, Your Excellency. Next, we would like to invite Madame Myriam St-Pierre, First Counselor of the Embassy of France in Indonesia. Madame, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to present and greet all of you for this event, 300 Years of Women's Rights Literary Activism Around the World. Today is a very special day for all Indonesians to celebrate Ibu kita Kartini and commemorate the impact she had, not only in Indonesia, but also around the world. With this webinar, we wanted to celebrate her and two of other important women who were early pioneers in women's rights activism, both in Mexico and France, Juana Ines de la Cruz and Olympe de Gouges. French philosopher Genevieve Freist is making us the wonderful honor to provide us insights about the work of Olympe de Gouges and her famous Declaration of the Rights of Women and the Female Citizen is now being studied by all French students. Gender equality is a top priority for France. At the international level, the French Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs is committed, including through its feminist foreign policy. Due to the importance of the participation of women at all levels, France supports the empowerment of women around the world by combating sexual and gender-based violence and advocating for women's rights and the education of girls. Through this discussion today, we wish to contribute to the debate on gender equality and social justice. And hopefully, it can encourage more women to continuously be bolder in expressing their views and vision. Allow me to express my appreciation and gratitude to the Embassy of Mexico, who co-organized this webinar with the Embassy of France, Institut Français Indonesia, as well as our partners, Universitas Indonesia, the University of the Cloister of Sor Juana, UN Women Indonesia, and all of the speakers who take part in this event. I wish you a very inspiring discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame First Councillor. Next welcoming remarks are from Professor Ari Kunchoro, SAMR PhD. He is the rector of Universitas Indonesia. Professor Ari, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, on behalf of Universitas Indonesia, I would like to welcome you all to this great opportunity, especially for the Honorable University leader and speaker. First, we would like to thank His Excellency Mr. Armando Alvarez, Mexican Ambassador, and His Excellency Oliver Chamber, French Ambassadors, and the Dean of Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Bondan Kanumoyoso, and also the Head of Program UN Women Indonesia, Miss Ibudui Yuliawati Freist, and also the French philosopher and director research at the National Center for Scientific Research, Mr. Genevieve Freist, and also director of University of Cloister of San Juana, Mr. Carmen Bridge Lopez Portillo Ramonon, and also the director of the branch of UNAM in Canada, Dr. Elisa Mayer, as historians. I would like to thank the Mexican Embassy, the French Embassy, and the Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Indonesia, for preparing this wonderful webinar. Today is 21st April. I think everybody knows that this is a big day for every Indonesian woman. And congratulate to all Indonesian women. We are celebrating the Kartini's Day to appreciate the contribution of the Raden Ajeng Kartini, woman literacy activist. And Kartini's Day also remind us that Indonesian women should fight for equality. And she proved that she has made extraordinary contributions to society as a woman through her work in literature and also in education. Ladies and gentlemen, Raden Ajeng Kartini has become a symbol of a struggle for the emancipation of Indonesian women who were under colonialism and Japanese patriarchal culture that limited women opportunities and identified women with domestic jobs such as the taking care of children, cooking, cleaning, the house, etc. Instead, Raden Ajeng Kartini has a belief about the importance of literature and education for the woman too, and that men and women should be treated equally. Raden Ajeng Kartini's struggle in gender equality has become an inspiration for all ladies, girls in Indonesia in pursuing their dreams and ambitions. Ladies and gentlemen, on these great occasions, I would like to deliver my gratitude to have this webinar, and I hope that we could know deeply about Kartini, so Juana, Ines, Cruz, and Olymp, because as notable women movement leader in each country. We really hope this webinar will be further strengthened and continue on the way to future to develop other kind of the joint program together between the Faculty of Humanities Universitas Indonesia with international partner. Thank you for your kind attention and enjoy this webinar. Thank you for all and stay in good health. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor. Before we continue, I would like to invite our hosts and speakers to capture this moment through a group photo. We kindly invite Dr. Bondan Kanumoyoso, the Dean of the Faculties of Humanities, University of Indonesia. We also invite Ambassador Armando de Alvarez. We would like to invite Madame Lizette Esteves. We would like to invite also Madame Charlotte Esnul. We'd also like to invite Ibudui Yuliawati Faiz, Dr. Luhgede Saraswati Putri, Genevieve Freist, Dr. Elisa Mayer, and anyone else who would like, anyone else who has been designated to be in the group photo. Please, if possible, open or turn on your cameras so we can see your wonderful smiling faces. And on my count, okay, organizers, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Yep. Did we get the photo? I think so. Maybe one more on my count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody joining us today, it is now time for us to listen to our keynote speakers. First up, we have Ibudui Yuliawati Faiz. She is the head of programs at UN Women Indonesia, with more than 20 years of experience working on gender equality and women's empowerment in NGOs, universities, and international development organizations. Prior to working with UN Women, she worked as a program director for Plan Indonesia, assisting with the organization and setting up the strategy for girls and young women. She received her bachelor's degree with honors in social science from University of Indonesia and her master's degree in international development and management from Lund University in Sweden. She will be discussing the state of feminism and gender equality in the world and its evolution through history. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Mia, for a generous introduction. Hello, everyone, depending on where you are. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. For participants from Jakarta, I'm very honored to be here. Thanking again IFI and also Embassy of France, Embassy of Mexico for being always at the forefront of gender equality since our Generation Equality Forum last year. I think UN Women value this partnership as well as commitment, especially as mentioned, both are well known for their feminist foreign policy, which is the future, I think, for foreign policy in the world. So I would like to perhaps bring you to the attention of not only the current state of gender equality at the global level, but also what fueled this gender equality movement. I think if we say 300 years of women literary, activism, we also see that many of these activism have fueled a global movement towards gender equality. So I would like to ask for the organizer to let me present the slides, just to give you a very visual presentation of what has been happening in 300 years, what have we achieved, and what are the remaining challenges and also opportunities within this, digital era. So can I share my screen? Okay, first of all, I would like to bring you to the attention that gender equality is fueled by women's movement. It does not happen in social, economic, or political vacuum, as we know. It always triggered by social and economic injustice. It's also triggered by the political nuances, the global, national, and regional level of the dynamics. So it is always women who are voicing not only for women's rights, but also for the injustice in the community. It is dynamics, it is context specific. So between one region to another, it's very, very context specific. But it also can be, having a thread between each of the movement. Let's see from the first Women's Rights Convention. It is about the women's right to vote in particular. It is met with derision by the public. But this is, I think, when the movement is born. And this is also the birth of International Women's Day. This is a day for women. Start in 8 March, the first International Women's Day. More than 1 million people within the women's suffrage and labor rights. Please note suffrage and labor rights. Again, it is driven by social and political situation. It is not only about women, but it is about injustice that happen around the globe. In its early years, even the day became the mechanism to protest for World War I. Then we move to the next decade when the United Nations is born. I think it is also very important that it gives a hope, no matter how we know that the hope is sometimes being challenged, but it is the hope that following the devastation of the World War II, the United Nations that formed in 1945 will foster international cooperation. It charter enshrines gender equality, we the people, reaffirm faith in the equal rights of men and women. But mind you, that among 800 delegates attending the charter signing, only 8 of them are women. So again, please be mindful that apart from many opportunities, representation of women is still challenged, even at the global stage, even when we talk about human rights. What happened in the 60s is a symbol of popular feminist resistance. We know the Mirabal sisters, Las Mariposas, or the butterflies in Dominican Republic. They trigger, a movement that recognized, then celebrated to mark the 25th November as raising awareness on ending violence against women. Please keep in mind, something that happened in Dominican Republic can trigger an overall global movement against violence against women. So it is not an isolated movement. All ideas spark and trigger, other movement across the globe, and it is being recognized. Women's voices are being heard. In the UN space, we also understand that the decades marking decades of women in the 70s is the first UN conference on women, followed by the landmark CEDAW, Convention to End Discrimination Against Women in 79. And then also after that, the Mexico Decade of Women in the 80s. In the 90s, Declaration of the Elimination of Violence Against Women, Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, UN Security Council Resolution 1325 that recognized women's role in peace building and prevention of conflict, in the 2000 UN Millennium Declaration, followed by the Sustainable Development Goals. I don't think that from one decade to another, it's an isolated, platform. It is a continuation of bringing women's right, women's gender equality into the attention of the global diplomacy level. So in terms of commitment, it's there. In terms of declaration, in terms of convention, that's signed by almost all the members of the United Nations, except for some countries, it's already been recognized globally. But I think the challenges remain. Where are we today? Let's see the data. The World Economic Forum said it will take 135 years to close gender gap in all over the world, in all countries. No country has achieved gender equality yet. That is the bad news. 267 years specifically for economic opportunity. 95% women have a bank account compared to 72% of men, a gap that has barely changed since 2011. Women spend 3 times the amount of time as men on unpaid care work. Only 20 countries have women as head of state. 1 in 3 women are still subjected to violence, physical or sexual violence, at least once in their lifetime. This is the latest data in 2021, including in Indonesia. In 2021, again, there are only 41 women CEO in the Fortune 500 companies, just 8% of all CEOs on the list. So these are the remaining challenges. But I do think that there are hope. The digital, activism is rising. The voices of young women who are more savvy in using digital platform to voice out the rights, the needs of women, to really to freely express their identity. This is something to be celebrated. All the hashtags is representation of their voices, no matter how invisible it is in terms of physical, probably unlike the Women's March. But this is also an important tool that we need to master in terms of using opportunity in the digital forum. But again, mind you that the AI itself is also still gender biased. Only 21% of women working in AI. So it is still a discriminatory space as well. And we see the rise of transnational business feminism. Corporates are start talking about this. I think this is not, again, an isolated incident. It is triggered by the World Development Report in the World Bank that say gender equality is smart economics. More companies is, heading towards or keen to join the force for gender equality, promoting the idea that gender equality is good for business, as well as using SDGs to build more movement and traction. So these are two, but I believe that there are many developments that we can also celebrate, very important, including the rise of feminist foreign policies. A lot of countries, and actually we hope that many countries will follow suit, adapting or responding to the foreign policy using the feminist perspective. So I will stop here and we'll get this back to our MC to continue the discussion about the three important women that shape the movement of gender equality around the globe. Over to you, Mia.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. That was indeed an enlightening presentation. It really just reminds me, and I hope for all of us, how far we've come, but also how far there is still left to go. And I think that was the perfect way to bring the scope to our discussions today. And next we have Madame Genevieve Freist. She is a French philosopher and director of research at the National Center for Scientific Research. She is an author, also a producer for France Culture, and teacher at the Institute of Political Studies of Paris, among others. Her research focuses on the gender controversy from an epistemological point of view and political point of view along three axes: the genealogy of democracy, the concepts of emancipation, and the philosophical problematization of the sex-gender object. She will be here discussing Olympe de Gouges, French playwright and political activist whose writings on women's rights and abolitionism reached a large audience in various countries. Madame Freist, the time is yours.
Thank you. Let me begin by a smile. Today, this year, Olympe de Gouges will be author of the baccalaureate. She's not, like it was said before, teached in the university or whatever, but every young people of 17 will read the Declaration of Rights of Women. It's why I smile, because when we know from where we come, the last 5 decades, it's a funny story and a very happy moment for my generation. That's the first thing. Well, Olympe de Gouges, she was not so well known in the 70s, even with the Declaration of the Rights of Women and a Female Citizen. And, but now, if we work on her work, what we see different things. First, she began to write before the revolution, and in 2 ways. First, against slavery, and second, with a theater piece. And these 2 things are very controversial, of course. Against slavery at the end of the 18th century, it's difficult. First, and the second, writing theater, like Rousseau said, is not for women, because it's something like in a public space. Theater is something in public space. It's not for women. So it's first, I would say it's a voice. Olympe de Gouges is a voice. Then came the revolution. And she continued to write. And she said, I am belonging to the nation. So she's belonging to a nation. She's a member of a nation, which is, she's important. She's not only, just standing on the position of feminist demand. She said, no, okay, I have to write. I can write. about the monarchy, about the revolution, about everything, because I belong to the nation. That's the second thing, very important. That is, she's a member. She's not only a woman exceptional, she's a member. And the third thing, of course, she's a citizen. She's a citizen. She's a citizen, and that's why she wrote this declaration, and I will say more about this declaration. So to be a citizen, it's to be very astonished when she saw the Declaration of Rights of Man. And she said, I don't understand. I don't understand. And she decided to write not the mirror, as somebody sometimes say, of the Declaration of Rights of Man. No, it's not a mirror. It's a declaration of the rights of women with very different things. And she knows that it's difficult. For example, the little prologue before, it's Homme, es-tu capable d'être juste? Man, as you're able to be just. She's not sure. And the text after the declaration is, women, wake up. So she says the women are not really waked. They are probably okay with the situation where they were. So and then the declaration came. And the declaration is not exactly the duplicata, and notably, and it's very well known, the Article 10. Si la femme monte à l'échafaud, elle doit pouvoir monter à la tribune. If a woman is going to the scaffold, then she's the right to went to the tribune. And so she make an equivalence between the political responsibility. If I'm sent to death during the revolution, then I have a political responsibility. Okay, but then I need to have the right to take the tribune, so to have the parole to speak to other people. So you know the story. She went not to the tribune, but she went to the scaffold. And it's very interesting because last year, it was under François Hollande presidency, everybody vote in France. It was a referendum to see what kind of woman can enter the Panthéon, where there is a reconnaissance of the best thing of honor of somebody. And the French people vote for Olympe de Gouges, but the presidency decided not to take her to the Panthéon. So it means that it's not finished, the story. It's why I began with the question of having Olympe de Gouges in the program of our students, because we are working again and again with a magnifique, all the texts. She wrote a lot of texts, and she's very interesting as a writer. And she's very interesting because the question of slavery was as important as all the other political questions. So it's a story, I've said, so she was not well known in the 19th century. We have to know that too. We discover her again in the 70s. So it's a very recent story. And it's why it's so difficult to accept that she went to the Panthéon by the presidency. But now she has a sculpture in the Assemblée Nationale. So she has in the place where you can go to the tribune to take the floor. So there's some irony in the story of Olympe de Gouges, and I like it. I like this irony for her. But we have to read what she wrote, because it's very interesting. So thank you.
Madame Freist, thank you so much for enlightening all of us about the life of Olympe de Gouges. I'm sure it's very interesting, and I'm sure for a lot of the participants from Indonesia, we perhaps don't know so much about her. So I hope that everybody takes the time to maybe read her work. I know that I definitely will. And finally, I would like, to congratulate you and everyone in France. If I'm not mistaken, you said that her works will now be studied by school students in France. And I think that is wonderful, and it's tremendous, and it should be celebrated. Thank you so much for joining us today. Up next, we have another two wonderful and accomplished women joining us. Here with us to share about Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, we have today Carmen Beatriz Lopez Portillo Romano, who joins us via a recorded video, and live from Canada, Dr. Elisa Mayer. And I think it is important to note that it is around 4:30 a.m. in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. So I would like to say a special thank you, Dr. Mayer, for joining us in the middle of the night. So please also allow me to introduce both of them. Carmen Beatriz Lopez Portillo Romano, she is the Dean of the University of the Cloister of Sor Juana. She earned her law degree from the Metropolitan Autonomous University and her master's degree from Latin American history from the Sorbonne. She's been a member of many associations and is a founding member of the Mexican Society of Bibliophiles. Since 1991, she's worked at the Universidad del Claustro de Sor Juana, of which she is the rector. And also we have with us today Dr. Elisa Mayer. She is the director of the branch of UNAM in Canada since 2017. She completed her bachelor's, master's, and PhD in history at the Faculty of Philosophy and Letters at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She has received many notable awards and recognition for her work as a researcher, and she also works full-time as a researcher at the Historical Research Institute at UANM at the highest level as a senior researcher. So without further ado, we have a short video for your viewing pleasure, and we also have with us live Dr. Elisa Mayer.
Rectora, muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos este día.
Muchas gracias.
Rectora, la figura de Sor Juana. Sor Juana fue poetisa, escribió villancicos, escribió obras de teatro. Fue una figura universal. ¿Cómo vemos a Sor Juana hoy en día?
A ver, Sor Juana, bueno, tenemos que ubicarla en el tiempo. Sor Juana es una mujer que nace en 1651, vive 44 años, muere en 1695. De esos años, 27 años vivió en este claustro. Y el abuelo marca la vida de Sor Juana porque cuenta con una biblioteca, que en esa época no era muy común que la gente tuviera biblioteca. Sor Juana desde chiquita le interesa aprender a leer y escribir. Dicen que ella cuenta que a los 3 años, siguiendo a su hermana, fue con una maestra y le dijo que ella quería aprender a leer y escribir. Y lo hace muy pequeñita, y muy pequeñita aprende a hablar, a escribir, aprende a hacer poesía. Ella dice que la poesía le venía como natural, como algo propio. Tenía tanto afán para conocer que alguien le dijo que no debía comer queso porque hacía tonta a la gente, ruda. Hacía ruda a la gente. Y Sor Juana además dice que si no aprendía lo que se había propuesto en el tiempo que lo había pensado, se cortaba el pelo. Y decía, es que no puede estar provista de belleza una cabeza tan desprovista de noticias. Entonces se cortaba el pelo. En esta pugna que había entre la Iglesia y el Estado, ¿no? Los virreyes la protegen. Y la protegen porque, a ver, pensemos en una mujer monja en esa época, donde las mujeres no tenían derecho al conocimiento, claro. Que escribe lo que escribe, ¿no? Escribe sobre todos los temas, no eran solamente temas teológicos, como en algún momento le había sugerido su confesor. Su confesor, sí. Escribes de filosofía, de historia, de arquitectura, de música. Justamente, de música vinculándola con las matemáticas. Yo estoy segura que lea Spinoza, yo estoy segura que lea Descartes, claro. ¿No? Porque toda la forma como ella analiza la realidad es desde una mirada muy crítica. Ha leído evidentemente todos los clásicos, evidentemente Platón, Aristóteles, claro. Y Agustín, a los padres de la Iglesia, a Santo Tomás, en fin, yo creo que ha leído a todos. Y es una mujer que tiene una ansia de saber impresionante. Entonces, esta es Sor Juana, en una época en donde las mujeres no podían ir a la universidad. Ella chiquita le dice a su mamá, oye, quiero ir a la universidad. No, no puedes. Claro. ¿Por qué? Porque solamente los varones, pues me he visto de varoncito. Pues eso no se puede.
Eso no se va a poder.
Eso no se puede. Que el hilo conductor de la obra y de la vida de Sor Juana es el amor a la libertad. Entonces, es la primera mujer en México, en todo caso que se conozca, que hace una defensa del derecho de las mujeres al saber, a la libertad, al descubrimiento de su ser y de su palabra, al derecho a la palabra.
Thank you. And next we have with us, joining us live from Canada, Dr. Elisa Mayer, over to you. Dr. Elisa Mayer.
Yes, thank you. I was not able to get my mic on. Thank you now. I am able to do that. Well, it is very stimulating to participate in this open dialogue surrounding the life and legacy of three extraordinary women from Indonesia, France, and Mexico. Ibu Kartini, Olam de Gush, and of course, Juana Ines de la Cruz. And it is a pleasure to talk about, always a pleasure to talk about the Mexican nun, Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz. As you heard in the video, she was born in 1648, well, around 1645, 48, we're not very sure about that, but we are sure that she died in 1695. And she's considered the most famous writer of the colonial period in Mexico. And she was known as the 10th Muse or the American Phoenix. Well, I'm glad that we have seen pictures of Sor Juana in the video also. It shows a little bit of her life and character. She's surrounded by this impressive library. And in fact, we right now can only give a scant overview of her ideas and struggles, and most of all of her legacy, which is immense, it's huge. And within her multiple writings, I will only make reference to part of the content of a very famous work of Sor Juana, which is called La Respuesta a Sor Filotea. That is a reply to Sister Filotea, where among other things, she defends the right of women to education and learning. Despite being sheltered at a nunnery in Mexico City, Sor Juana came to the public's attention as a very gifted poet and playwright. And she earned great fame in her own time, not only in Mexico City, but also overseas, with the publication of her works in Spain. And as a female scholar and talented writer in a predominantly masculine society, Sor Juana struggled from within the confines of the convent to defend her position in the public sphere. To that end, she used multiple discursive strategies to resist marginalization and discrimination. She constructed a narrative in opposition to the masculine culture that prevailed among the ecclesiastical individuals she was surrounded by. And throughout her life, Sor Juana stood up for gender equality in education and learning. But her path, as you can imagine, was not an easy one back then in the 17th century. Her outspoken opinions on love, misogyny, and parity between the sexes earned her the animosity of several church authorities. First, as Carmen Beatriz said in the video, we have to understand her context. We have to view that the ecclesiastical environment in New Spain at the time was centered in a male-dominated atmosphere. Normative social rules imposed many types of limits on women, and Sor Juana responded to the challenges presented by New Spain's religious, paternalistic, and patriarchal environment. But she was an exception to the rule. Generally, women in those days were expected to be submissive and followed social rules, and they were conformed, most of them were conformed with that kind of behavior of culture. They had to be obedient to men, prudent and virtuous, taking care of the household, and dedicated solely to female activities. And that was true in the upper and middle classes in New Spain, so to speak, although we can say that there was more freedom in the lower segments of society and in rural areas. But of course, there was no aspiration, not to say time, to study, because women had overwhelming tasks and hard work alongside their husbands. Sor Juana once said she preferred religious life over marriage, and had chosen the convent because there she would find more solace and time to pursue her intellectual endeavors in the solitude of her cloister. Indeed, there she found that opportunity. She was able to write, to study, and managed to gather an important collection of books and scientific tools to ease her curiosity. In the reply to Sister Filotea, Sor Juana revealed herself and shared a vivid and sincere account of her life. The text, which has a marked autobiographical orientation, is written with real ardor and audacity. Irony was used profusely as a part of Sor Juana's rhetoric. There, she described her inclination to learning and studying since she was a small girl, as we heard, something that increased over time. And one of her arguments was that an intelligent person should gain knowledge regardless of their sex. She proposed that women be given the freedom to learn, even if they must keep their activity in private. One interesting thing about the reply is that Sor Juana openly declared that she was free to dissent from any person whom she disagreed in intellectual issues. She had done so previously with a very famous theologian, the Portuguese Jesuit Antonio Vieira, precisely on theological aspects. This enraged many men from the ecclesiastical circles who became the nun's fierce critics. In her reply, she defends her right to differ from male authorities. There, we also discover many more values that Sor Juana defended, several of which were ahead of her time. For example, she unmasked the sexual policies, marital customs, the difference in common attitudes toward the behavior of women and men, the right to express one's opinions and other issues in her society. Sor Juana struggled with the powerful magistrates of the Mexican church, and this struggle did not lead to a happy ending. the nun finally surrendered to the extraordinary pressure of the patriarchal priests, who ultimately made her conform to the rigorous prescriptions of conventual life and religious responsibilities. So Juana was forced to give up her liberty also, of course, but her library, her precious library, and leave behind her scientific artifacts, and of course, abandon her writing. The voice of her pen was silenced while she confined herself to absolute enclosure. This occurred less than a year before Sor Juana's death. The reply to Philotea is an outstanding argument for the intellectual dignity of women. Not only in this work, but also in others, she criticized authoritarianism and confronted male control in society. I invite you to read the reply to Philotea, and it's been translated into several languages. Sor Juana's questions have been considered a pioneering call for later feminist demands and claims, and many other aspects. In her narrative, the famous Baroque writer stood out as a woman in her circumstances to learn and write despite the limitations of her time. Her masterful work is one of the most important written productions in colonial Mexico's literary history, and it is a testimony of her defense against the deprecating of women in terms of education, knowledge, and teaching. It is extremely significant that Sor Juana's voice still connects with modern readers, particularly women, in their fight for equality. I am really eager to have this conversation with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Elisa Mayer. And we also can't wait to hear your take during the discussion that is going to happen a little bit later on. Thank you. And next we have with us Dr. Lu Gede Saraswati Putri, SSM Home. She is a lecturer of philosophy at University of Indonesia and is a specialist in women affairs. She studied her bachelor all the way through to her doctorate at the Department of Philosophy, University of Indonesia. She's a published author, both fiction and nonfiction, and her writings as a columnist have appeared in many media outlets around the country. She writes extensively on social, cultural, and political themes. She is here to talk about the life and work of Raden Ajeng Kartini. Saras, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Mia. Let me share my slides. Hi, everybody, and thank you also, most importantly, to the organizers from UI's Faculty of Humanities and also our partners from IFI, Embassy of Mexico and France, of course, the Dean of Faculty of Humanities, Bondan, and esteemed speakers, how I enjoyed and felt enlightened listening to all of your presentation, and of course to all of our audience this afternoon. Let me just greet you with a joyful Selamat Hari Kartini, and Call Me Simply Kartini is actually taken by a line from her letter, and it was also inspired. It inspired famous author in Indonesia, with the publication of Panggil Aku Kartini Saja, just to show how Kartini, her idea of equality and her compassion, her simple but yet also complex ideas, it's all embodied in this one sentence, Call Me Simply Kartini. And on this hopeful day, we are celebrating the life and the wisdom of a great Indonesian thinker, Kartini. And I remember my first time reading Habis Gelap Terbitlah Terang, From Darkness into Light, during my undergraduate year, long time ago. It was captivating. It was captivating and poignant, and in its sincerity. But also, it is also imbued with a sense of resistance toward traditional values and customary views that position women discriminate. In Indonesia, Kartini is a national hero. Her influence has been widely spread into generation. Her letters reveal her ideas, contemplative thoughts ahead of its time. And she discusses various things, including a longing to see her people liberated, emancipated. Kartini struggled all through her life in pursuit of her dreams. Her correspondences discuss about the importance of education for women, which during that time was forbidden during the Dutch colonial time. She strived to attain equal opportunity for education, and many times in the letters that we can read that she felt how she strived to attain equal opportunity for education, also in a sense of a dilemma of respecting Islamic values and also Javanese cultures and negotiating her freedom. Her letters speak of empathy and understanding diverse cultures through one's conscience. And her tone had always been firm in fighting for human dignity or human natural rights. And her extensive reading from literature, philosophical texts, political treatises appeared vividly in her letters. I will read some of the excerpts about universal humanity. And we feel that the kernel of all religion is right living and that all religion is good and beautiful. But, O ye peoples, what have ye not made of? Religion is designed as a blessing. It should form a bond between all the creatures of God, white or brown, of every station, sex, and belief. For all are children of one Father, of one God. There is no God but the Almighty, say we Muhammadans. And with us all believing monotheists, God is the master creator of everything. Her remarkable writings, of course, here is being translated from Dutch, as we can observe, flowed eloquent, and we can feel her electrifying passion. She was proud being a Javanese. Of course, there was always a feeling of ambiguity, but whenever I read her writings about art, the power of art, she always talks about how she was proud of the Javanese culture and was always, during that time, supportive to the Javanese people to explore art and their craftsmanship. I reflect on Kartini's writing continuously throughout my life, and especially thinking about feminism in Indonesia. Kartini spoke about love and the acts of compassion, caring in performing our duties to fight injustice, to fight to those who are least fortunate. And this, I think this, of course, is the crux of feminism. feminism, in my experience, my personalized experience, is an ethics. It's an action. It is also an engagement to work for transformation in society that prioritize justice and equality. And the ethics of care, of course, it is grounded on the belief that instead of we are creating this society full of conflict and competition, confrontations, and hierarchy, ethics of care proposes a society that is based on cooperation and love, instead of just talking about duty and rights, but love and caring, and how to work together, taking care of each other. Kartini has inspired wave of movement in Indonesia. This is the picture of Sukina, a farmer from Rembang, Central Java. And Sukina, alongside other women's farmer, unified themselves in the fight to protect the sacred mountain of Kendeng from the threat
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I think your voice is a little bit soft. Is there any way for you to turn up the volume, or perhaps I think the Bluetooth also flickers a little bit. We would love to be able to hear you more clearly. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you.
No problem. Yeah, wait, let me just. Okay, how's my voice now? Is it better?
Oh, so much better. Thank you.
Okay,
yes,
so sorry.
Great.
So sorry, everybody. So, of course, here, Kartini, as I said, inspired a wave on various movements, women's movements in Indonesia. And this is the picture of Sukina, and she's one of the farmer coming from Rembang, also the place of living for Kartini. And Sukina, alongside other women's farmer, they worked together and unified themselves in the fight to protect the sacred mountain of Kendeng. And they are fighting against the threat of unsustainable and reckless concept of development. But however, they are also trying to imagine another way of living together, that they propose how we should change our view about development and conducting our economic and attempts to create infrastructure, and how that includes maintaining wilderness and also in harmony with nature. So these women farmers, as you can see here in the painting of by Dewi Chandraningrum, she's also a feminist. And as you can see here, this is a picture of the Kartini Kendeng. Kartini Kendeng, they're working on their lesung or mortar, and they're called Kartini Kendeng. I always feel that they are as if a reborn again, and a new and also manifestation, an embodiment of a new spirit of resistance. Of course, ecological feminism or ecofeminism now in Indonesia, apart from a kind of philosophical advancement of the theory, long before it, I think Indonesian, especially women, they are already very intertwined with nature. And as a philosophical theory, ecological feminism in Indonesia is a social movement, unifying the demand of women's movement, also with ecological movement, of course, in hope of safeguarding Indonesia's nature. Okay, this is my last slide. And on my last part, I want to share with all of you the current battle for gender justice in Indonesia. Of course, the pandemic has been a terrible ordeal globally for everybody. But analyzing the matter using intersectionality, we can see that women as vulnerable groups became severely affected with unemployment, job losses, formal or informal sectors, unequal health accessibility, even increasing cases of violences towards women. And on my recent publication, I researched about how simultaneously women are also the backbone of the national economy during the pandemics. And most of them are ultra micros entrepreneurs, UMKM. And they are forced to be adaptive and agile in facing adversity. And as I mentioned earlier, that the report published by National Commission on Violence Against Women indicates alarming spike in cases of violence against women. But I also want to share with you a very happy news that finally, after almost 10 years urging, lobbying, rallying, and working together as citizens in Indonesia, on April 12th, the auspicious month and during the month of Kartini, the bill finally passed. It was passed and it was a truly landmark of justice and humanity. And the bill, hopefully, it will become a new source of hope for survivors and women of Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mbak Saras. That was a wonderful presentation. And yes, in Indonesia, so millions of women in Indonesia, girls and women, are celebrating the fact that the bill on protection of sexual violence for women and children has finally been passed. And it's been, I think, over a decade in the making.
Yes.
So thank you. And now we do have time for a quick discussion with our esteemed panel for today. So I'd like to invite the organizers to perhaps pin our keynote speakers. We have Ibudui, we have Mbak Saras, we have Dr. Elisa Mayer and Madame Genevieve Freist with us. And also for our friends joining us on Zoom, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We don't have a lot of time, as you know, but we will try to perhaps answer maybe one or two. So ladies, it is indeed an honor to be with you today. My first question is, the women that we're highlighting today, and you are all experts because you've devoted your lives to study them and their works. If they were alive today, what do you think they would say about the state and present conditions of gender equality throughout the world? So on my screen, I'm going to start from the bottom and then work my way up. So perhaps Madame Genevieve, would you like to answer first?
The question of today is economic autonomy everywhere in the world. So, well, against sexual violence, I was very happy to listen to this good news from Indonesia last month. Of course, it's something very, very touching. But the real question, you know, Virginia Woolf say, you need a woman's room, but she had, and everybody forgot it. And 500 livres of money. Well, the woman needs money. So I think it's a fight we can have everywhere in the world. That's the first thing. And the second thing I want to say about Olympe de Gouges, listening to the other presentation, very, very, very interesting. I discover women I didn't know. is that writing a Declaration of Rights of Women, Olympe de Gouges decided to take in account the question of the universal. And my admiration for her comes from that. She doesn't say we are included in the universal history of man and the Declaration of the Rights of Man. She said, I have to declare the universal of women. And it's a paradox, of course. It's a paradox because she decided to stay as woman and telling the story that it's inside the universal. So it's very difficult to do that. And I appreciate it. And listening to the others' presentation and all the women I know from the last 3 centuries, I think it's a very, very original position. Where I am in the universal. I will not only say, I want to be included and it's okay. No, she said more. And we can continue to think about it now, two centuries after Olympe de Gouges. Yes. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes, 2 centuries after. It is still relevant. Thank you so much, Madame Genevieve. Dr. Elisa, over to you.
Yes, thank you. It is very hard for me to imagine Sor Juana in the present time because she would be monstrous. I mean, she would have had the freedom, absolute freedom to create, to write, to speak. And at least she would have been the Nobel Prize winner, I'm sure of that. Her work is absolutely appalling. And Genevieve was talking about economic autonomy nowadays. And it is very interesting to know that Sor Juana was paid by the authorities of colonial Mexico when they asked her to design, for example, the triumphal arch where the viceroy and his wife were supposed to be welcomed in Mexico City back then in the 17th century, at the end of the 17th century, and the marquises were given the welcome ceremony in Mexico. And Sor Juana designed this arch, triumphal arch, and she created all this symbolism, etc., for the Cabildo of Mexico City, and was paid a good sum of money for that. She earned money when she was asked for many other tasks. And with that money, she bought books and instruments for scientific research, for example. She was forced to give that at the end of her life, of course, and she had to get rid of all that material. But she left a testament where she inherited the things she had. So I don't know if we can say that she was economically autonomous, but it is very interesting that in the 17th century, a woman could afford to pay her rent and also had a servant in the convent, which she paid with her money. So that's something very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, economic independence, I think, continues to be, I think, one of the most fundamental issues for women, not just back then, but even now, as we heard from you and as we heard from Ibudui. Actually, I have a specific little question for you just after this. But before I do that, Mat Saras, very quickly over to you. So, kalau Ibu kita Kartini, if she was alive today, what do you think she would have to say about the conditions of gender equality throughout the world today?
Apa ya, Mbak Mia? I think about gender equality and also I think maybe I would imagine, because as if sometimes I feel like I feel like I'm really close to Kartini, because I've been reading the letters and her words all of my life, and being a half Balinese, half Javanese, I can understand her sense of a kind of ambivalency. Like she felt ambivalent about in one side, she's always trying to uphold her duties as a dutiful daughter and to the society, but also in the other side, she wants to be free and liberated, and having her own dream and working towards those goals. And I think that kind of experience is not isolated to her. I think even, of course, now we have with all of the progress happening, and also with the Convention of Elimination of Discrimination against Women, we have better structures of society, an equal structure of society, but we still have those barriers. And I think how to incorporate those barriers that came from values, and how to make it or strive for compatibility, I guess, because the type of women's movement, as I said earlier, here in Indonesia is because feminism is not a monolithic, it's a very pluralistic ideas. And I'm also very excited to create with other women the idea of the kind of a knowledge for women's movement here in Indonesia. That's one thing, and I think she'll be in that area. But also I'm thinking about, apart from, of course, equality, gender equality, and equality for human beings, I think also she was also a very kind of a contemplative and always being very philosophical in her writings. She's always, there's a sense of a kind of a cosmopolitanism idea, because she read various books and literatures. And I feel like she will be also very disappointed in seeing and how adversity, the pandemic as a troubled time, but also during the pandemic, there's also the rise of kind of a authoritarian power everywhere and war everywhere, and I think she will focus on that and addressing that, because for her, in her writing, fighting for rights for women is a part of humanity. So it is also, as I said earlier, how to return to that idea of human dignity. I think that would be her comment.
There is human dignity. Yeah, I think that's also a very important point. Thank you for your response. Madhuri, I have a slightly different question for you, just really quickly. So I know you from a lot of the previous work you've done around the empowerment of girls as well, and you've been doing this for a number of years. Given that we are living in the age of social media, I would like to ask you, do you think that literature is still a weapon? And if not, what are the contemporary weapons that people use?
Yes, it is still a powerful weapon. I think being able to express yourself in a literary tradition is almost a powerful weapon, no matter what the platform is. Digital is just one platform. Books is one platform, publication is one platform. But the ability for women, the agency of women to decide, to be well-informed and make decisions based on their knowledge, voicing their rights, voicing their concern, women in all their diversity, of course, It's the most important thing. And I think this is the true essence of literature, right? Ability to express yourself in, whatever works that you do. No matter the platform is. It's just a matter of knowing that, look, digital and online platform is also biased. If we see that the programmer is only 21%, women, the inputs, the data that is being inputted there rarely also represent women's perspective. The fight is still long. Just because it is a democratic space, it doesn't mean that it is free from discrimination and biases. So that's probably, my last, not critique, but also, you have to take it in with a grain of salt around this, digital space.
Yeah, that's true. I think that there are so many more opportunities online, but also there are so many more things that we do have to be cautious and aware of due to social media. And I would also, once again, just quickly would like to invite participants, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. And our organizers also said that they will be distributing an attendance form for all participants who have joined us today. And so actually, maybe just really quickly in a couple of sentences, I'd also like to invite Mak Saras and Dr. Elisa and Madame Genevieve to also answer that question. I mean, you are, literary experts. So do you think that it is still relevant today? I saw, Madame Genevieve, your eyes light up at this question. So perhaps you would also, do you have maybe a couple of sentences to comment?
The question of the voice and the question of writings, as it was underlined in all our speeches, it's very interesting. The way to express
Madame Genevieve, are you with us? Okay,
yes.
So I think her screen is frozen, but perhaps we can
you don't have my... Do you have it?
I can hear.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
Mia, is it your Wi-Fi? Probably.
I think it's the problem is not Genevieve's, but maybe Mia's.
Yes.
Because I can hear her and see her very well.
Hello? Hi, is everyone still here? Thank you so much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Do you hear me?
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I continue? No, it's...
Hi.
Well, one of the issue of the last 3 centuries was the question of the reason of women. If they're the same reason as men or not. And with reason, it means learn, and we can see in Afghanistan what is going on, how it's important to let the women out of the reason, out of the knowledge, and all these things. And knowledge means that you can write also. So it's the exercise of reason. And even if we fight against sexual violence, etc., and for all we need for the bodies of women, that's very important. But the question of reason is the question from the 17th century. Have they the same reason as men? And can they use their reason? So it's just what I say, and then we can write, we can be a political woman, can do everything. And it's I don't know the word in English, it's le nerf de la guerre. that the way of the war is there. How we can use our reason. So that's all.
Yes, thank you so much. And just quickly, if we can have a couple of sentences from you, Dr. Mayer, and then also from Saras. So what do you think about the advent of social media, and how has that impacted on literature? Is it still
well, yes, of course. I have my mic, yeah. Yes, of course, I agree. I absolutely agree with Saras and Genevieve about this. The impact is huge. Sor Juana thought that women could be intellectually equal to men if they were given equal access to education. So it's something that, as my colleague has said, something that still occurs in our present time in many countries and in many circles. So we can understand that interest or that goal in Sor Juana or in Christine de Pizan or many other women that have been fighting for that same thing since classic times, since Greece and Rome, and then the medieval times and etc. It's just like a quest that women have had throughout the centuries. So yes, education is of course the key to open every door for women and men. I mean, for both, because we can also see ignorance and analphabetism in men, and the fact that this would enable men as well as women to be able to climb, or to be able to know, to have the knowledge. So yes, of course, education is the key.
True, education is the key. Thank you, Dr. Mayer. Saras, over to you.
Yes, was it also about art, the question?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you, Mia. And of course, thank you for Genevieve and Alicia. I think also because of Kartini's extensive comments about art and how art is also for her, she considered that art enables her to feel, and in the Javanese word is rasa, the kind of rasa, and how she feels her people, the Javanese people, and how she values that art for the Javanese people is not separated with the ordinary life. It's a part of their lives. And sorry about my dogs. And I think also thinking about what Alicia has said, and also Genevieve, I think not only for Kartini, not only prosperity and the true well-being in a society, it cannot be.
Is it just me, or
I think
have we lost audio?
No, I can't.
Okay.
So in order to attain that kind of prosperity and well-being, it cannot be done.
I'm sorry, Saras, I can't hear. I can't seem to hear you. Can you lean a little closer to the?
But can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think everybody can hear me, Mia.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Can I continue, Mia? So the idea of well-being is never isolated into or isolate the idea of how to build a society. Prosperity and well-being is between the cooperation or the partnership of men and women. That constantly, that part is always being repeated in her letters, that in order to in order to create a wealthy and also a society, a modern society, but also still very full values of the uniqueness of the cultural values. For her, it's not only depend on men, it's a partnership with women. But wherever women is being marginalized for her, then it is a sign of a broken society. It is a sick society. So we can never even attain that idea of a well-being and a true prosperity. That's for her. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I've been kicked out of the Zoom meeting room. It's raining very hard.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. So it's raining really hard. This is actually the perfect time to get like a warm drink. This is exactly the way that I love to spend my afternoons, except for getting kicked out of Zoom, listening to a group of amazing women. We do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So I'll get back on track now. Sorry about that. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat box. So let's start with this one. And this is a question from, let's see, Triya Nuarta. So the question is, how to distinguish gender equality that is fought for by women and that is fought for by men? So I think the question means, like, is there a difference? Like, do men and women, are we fighting for different things when we talk about gender equality? This is interesting. Perhaps Dr. Mayer, would you like to just very briefly address this question?
I think it depends on the person. It depends on how men view women, how women view themselves and men, and how also women educate their male children to have a different view on women. So I think it depends on the context, the society, and the social position, and many factors that obviously deal with how people think and feel towards themselves and towards others. So it's not like a monolithic answer to a very uniform question. It's just that it depends. It depends on the person and their backgrounds.
True. Matsaras or Madame Genevieve, would you like to add anything to this?
Just one thing, perhaps, but focusing on my work, I decided never work on the identities, but all the time looking for the concepts, the problems, the problematics of gender equality. So it's not a question of person. It's not a question of this category or not category. But for example, the consent and domestic service or exclusive democracy, etc. I tried every time to find the question, the philosophical question, and not the position of what is good or not for a sexual position. It's a choice. It's a philosophical choice.
It is a philosophical
but it's a way to avoid the quarrel I know for years and decades. Or are we against or not against mixity? Are we against or not against? It's not, for me, it's not useful. So I try every time to find the problems.
That's true. That's true. And when we talk about feminism, we're not just talking about the advancement and equality for girls and women. It's for all the genders, right?
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But Saras, would you like to add anything?
I think Alicia and Genevieve they have elaborated, but maybe if in my earlier remark about how based on Kartini's view, of course, I think there's a misunderstanding when viewing the work for gender equality is exclusive for women, but that's also, I think, is incorrect. But of course, we cannot deny also for feminism, it's not saying that women, the meaning of equality is not saying that women and men are the same, but that it's not, it cannot be simplified like that, but that women and men, they have equal opportunity in public spaces, in accessing public goods, and they have the equal rights. So it's a political construction, of course, but in a more philosophical sense, why fighting for gender equality is also involving, of course, men, because it's the equality that in feminism is actually the fight to recognize those diversity and how to work in protecting those diversities. I think, of course, as Alicia said, we cannot answer it monolithically, and but I think that's the main. I think that's the main thing when we think about gender equality as also a part of, for Kartini, for instance, it's a part of our agenda for humanity, how to maintain humanity, how to protect humanity.
I totally agree. Welcome back, Ibudui. It's so nice to have you with us again. I also got kicked out of the Zoom room. So we do have a few more questions, but I am also very aware that we are starting to run out of time, although, you know, I would love to spend a whole day with all of you. But I understand everybody has busy lives, and it is also fasting month in Indonesia. What I would like to do now is to get like a closing statement from each of you. So maybe in just a couple of short sentences, can you tell us your hopes for the future of gender equality, not just in your respective countries, but also globally? And I think I'm going to start from the top of my screen this time around, and fingers crossed I will stay in the Zoom room until we finish this event. Mbak Saras, can we start with you?
Okay, Mia. Of course, I think in reading Habis Gelap Terbitlah Terang and feeling and also feeling the kind of emotions in the writings of Kartini. What Kartini has also said, one of the great happiness for her is working and helping other women. And I think that message is, I think it still resonates with us now, that we can strive for gender equality, and in doing so we are creating this solidarity. And this afternoon, of course, meeting all of you is part of also a joyful and a happy moment for me, and how to in that solidarity, not only dreaming but also working and actualizing that equal society. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Alicia, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think these women, these three women, but many others too, are an inspiration and an example for us as women, but also for humanity as a whole. And thinking in Sor Juana, she was not an activist as we understand today, although she has been named the pioneer feminist of Latin America. But what she did really was that she challenged prevailing attitudes which affected her personally, and with a call for female education. And with this, she challenged the gender roles of her time. And she wrote works that would now be considered controversial. But for me, she managed to express her voice. And that's what I really love about Sor Juana. And also these very, very notable women like Kartini and Olam de Gouche, for example. But these are three examples. That we have many others, and we will always have this this perspective of their voice. Thank you. I would conclude with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alicia. Madame Genevieve.
One thing in the text of Olam de Gouche is her use of irony, of humor, and of irony about herself. For example, like people say, well, she's not writing her text because she doesn't write, she doesn't know how to write, etc., etc. And she has always irony and humor. And at the same time, the philosopher Hegel said that the feminine is the irony of the community. L'ironie de la communauté, irony of community. I think that the feminism is the irony of community. So we are, and this wonderful three women, we are the proposal of looking at the community, of looking at the humanity with a sense of criticism. And this criticism can lead us very far. So when I am optimistic, I say that. When I am optimistic, I say in one generation, my generation, when I see all what we have won, it's wonderful. But at the same time, every day, today, when I see the sexism of the day life, the sexism of the work in the intellectual sphere, for example, so I'm not optimistic. So irony is the possibility to be pessimistic and optimistic together. So, and Olympe was very good for that. So I like it. I like her for that too.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Madame Genevieve. Ibudui, last but definitely not least, would you like to share your closing thoughts?
Hearing the extraordinary three women from Indonesia, Mexico, and France give me the thought about the remaining challenges ahead of us. And that is basically what these three women are fighting for: structure of gender inequality, patriarchal society, you know, whatever. In Kartini's life, it is the feudalism. It is, you know, the thought that women has to be like that in a traditional role. And probably in Sor Juan is about living in a cloistered and predominantly male, you know, religious leader. In Olympe is probably also fighting for the position of women in a literary tradition. All of them is about structure. What we cannot fight really is the norms. It is very much hidden. What we should avoid, and this is what I'm hoping for, is we have to look at the really gender equality, substantive equality, and not into this false hope of equality. Like, because of there are many women now, you know, working as poets, as writers, it doesn't mean that there is no inequality. It is still inequality. It is still a norms that we need to fight for. I think, I don't know. I agree with Madame de Freist that sometimes it's just, it's no glimmer of hope, although there are some changes that is incrementally happen all the time, every year. So I think keep the optimism is good, but also always be fighting for the norms. We have not defeated the gender norms yet, the traditional norms, the harmful practices. We haven't been able to do it quite well.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I would like to really thank all of you amazing women for joining us today on this panel. And also, I would like to just say that the past 2 hours have been really such a wonderful way to commemorate Kartini Day, and also to learn more, not just about Kartini, but also about Sor Juana and also Olympe de Gouges. It's been enlightening and eye-opening. And I think we really have better realized that for all of us, all the women and girls around the world, we really stand on the shoulders of giants. And it was due to them that we are able to arrive to this point in time. But we also need to be mindful that we really still have such a long way to go, and really the struggle continues. And the women that are celebrated today use their voices, and I think we can say that their voices continue to echo across generations. To start wrapping up today's amazing event, we have a poetry reading, and we have also 3 lovely and amazing women joining us to read these poems. We have the poem of Olympe de Gouges, read by Sabrina Chevia, an alumni of Institut Français Indonesia. We have a poem by Sor Juana, and this is going to be read by Tanya Huntington, who is a poet, essayist, and painter. And we also have fragments of letters penned by Raden Ajeng Kartini, and that is going to be read by Alia Haider, who is a bibliophile and aspiring writer, and she's a second-year student at the English Studies Department in the University of Indonesia. And I know that all of you are just excited, as I am, to listen to these poetry readings. So let's get started.
Déclaration des droits de la femme et de la citoyenne. Homme, es-tu capable d'être juste? C'est une femme qui te fait la question. Tu ne lui ôteras pas moi ce droit. Dis-moi, qui t'a donné le souffrant empire d'opprimer mon sexe, ta force, tes talents? Observe le Créateur dans sa sagesse, parcours la nature dans sa grandeur dont tu sembles vouloir te rapprocher. Et donne-moi, si tu l'oses, l'exemple de cet empire tyrannique. Remonte aux animaux, consulte les éléments, étudie les végétaux, jette enfin un coup d'œil sur toutes les modifications de la matière organisée. Et rends-toi à l'évidence quand je t'offre les moyens. Cherche, fouille et distingue, si tu le peux, les sexes dans l'administration de la nature. Partout, tu les trouveras confondus. Partout, ils coopèrent avec un ensemble harmonieux à ce chef-d'œuvre immortel. L'homme s'est fagoté un principe de cette exception, bizarre, aveugle, boursouflé de science et dégénéré, dans ce siècle de lumière et de sagacité, dont l'ignorance de la plus caresse. Il veut condamner un despote sur un sexe qui a reçu toutes les facultés intellectuelles. Il prétend jouir de la révolution et réclamer ses droits à l'égalité pour ne rien dire de plus. Les mères, les filles, les sœurs représentent de la nation, demandent d'être constituées en ensemble national. Considérons que l'ignorance, l'oubli ou le mépris des droits de la femme sont les seules causes des malheurs publics et de la corruption des gouvernements ont résolu d'exposer dans une déclaration solennelle les droits naturels, inaliénables et sacrés de la femme. Afin que cette déclaration constante présente à tous les membres du corps social ne rappelle sans cesse leurs droits et leurs devoirs, afin que les actes du pouvoir des femmes et ceux du pouvoir des hommes pouvant être à chaque instant comparés avec le but de toute institution politique en soient plus respectés, afin que les réclamations des citoyennes fondées désormais sur des principes simples et incontestables tournent toujours au maintien de la constitution des bonnes mœurs et du bonheur de tous. En conséquence, le sexe supérieur en beauté, comme en courage, dans les souffrances maternelles, reconnaît et déclare en présence et sous les auspices l'être suprême, les droits suivants de la femme et de la citoyenne. Merci.
Silly, you men, so very adept at wrongly faulting womankind, not seeing you're alone to blame for faults you plant in woman's mind. After you've won by urgent plea the right to tarnish her good name, you still expect her to behave, you that coaxed her into shame. With you, no woman can hope to score, whichever way she's bound to lose. Spurning you, she's ungrateful. Succumbing, you call her lewd. Or which is more to be blamed, though both will have cause for chagrin, the woman who sins for money, or the man who pays money to sin. So why are you men all so stunned at the thought you're all guilty alike? Either like them for what you've made them, or make of them what you can like. I well know what powerful arms you wield in pressing for evil. Your arrogance is allied with the world, the flesh, and the devil. Afterward, when I was 6 or 7 and already knew how to read and write, along with all the sewing skills and needlework that women learn, I discovered that in the city of Mexico, there was a university with schools where the different branches of learning could be studied. And as soon as I learned this, I began to deluge my mother with urgent and insistent pleas to change my manner of dress and send me to stay with relatives in the city of Mexico so that I might study and take courses at the university. She refused, and rightly so. Nevertheless, I found a way to read many different books my grandfather owned, notwithstanding the punishments and reproofs this entailed, so that when I went to the city of Mexico, people were astonished. I became a nun because although I knew that way of life involved much that was repellent to my nature, I refer to its incidental, not its central aspects. Nevertheless, given my total disinclination to marriage, it was the least unreasonable and most becoming choice I could make to assure my ardently desired salvation. What is there for us women to know, if not bits of kitchen philosophy? As Lupercio Leonardo said, one can perfectly well philosophize while cooking supper. And I am always saying, when I observe these small details, if Aristotle had been a cook, he would have written much more.
Hi, good afternoon. I'll be reading an excerpt from Kartini's letters. Okay. 1900. We want to ask the Indian government to send us to Europe at the country's expense. Rukmini wishes to study art and later to work for the revival of our native art. Kleincha wants to go to the School of Domestic Science so that she may learn to teach frugality, good housekeeping, and the care of money to our future mothers and housewives. For in these virtues, the careless, idle, luxurious, and splendor-loving Javanese people have much need of schooling. And I, as a teacher, am to instruct the future mothers in practical knowledge, to teach them to understand love and justice and right conduct, as we have learned them from the Europeans. The government wishes to bring prosperity to Java and to teach the people frugality. It is beginning with the officials. But what good will it do if the men are compelled to lay aside money when the women in whose hands the housekeeping rests do not understand the worth of that money? The government wishes to educate and civilize the Javanese people and must needs begin by teaching the smallest and highest class, which is the aristocracy, the Dutch language. But isn't intellectual education everything? To be truly civilized, intellectual and moral education must go hand in hand. And who can do most for the elevation of the moral standard of mankind? The woman and the mother. It is at the breast of woman that man receives his earliest nourishment. The child learns there first to feel, to think, and to speak. And the earliest education of all foreshadows the whole afterlife. The most serious fault of our people is idleness. It is a great drawback to the prosperity of Java. So many latent powers lie undeveloped through indolence. The high-born Javanese would rather suffer bitter want and misery than have plenty if he must work. Nothing less than a gold-colored payung thinks the high-born head. The noble makes light of everything except that most desirable article, a golden parasol. Our people are not rich in ideals, but an example which speaks would impress them. They would be impelled to follow it. My sisters and I wish to go before and lighten the way. For that reason, we want more than anything else to go to Holland to study. It will be well with us if we can go. Little mother, help us. When we come back to Java, we shall open a school for girls of the nobility. If we cannot get the means through our government, then we will work for it in some other way. Ask our friends to subscribe, start a lottery or something. The means will be found when we are ready to do the work. But I am running ahead because we have the hardest struggle here at home. With father's consent, we should be richer than queens. If we could only have that. It is frightful to be a Javanese girl and to have a sensitive heart. Poor, poor parents, what a fate was yours to have such daughters. We hope and pray fervently that they may be blessed with long life, and that later they will be proud of us, even though we do not walk abroad under glittering golden sunshades. I will work hard over the Dutch language so that I can have it completely under my thumb and do with it as I will. And then I shall seek, through means of my pen, to arouse the sympathy of those who are able to help us in our work to improve the lot of the Javanese woman. Poor fool, I hear you say, if you push with all your might against the gigantic structure of ignorance, will you be able to overturn it? But we will push, little mother, with all our strength, and if only one stone of it falls out, we shall not have worked in vain. But first, we are going to seek the cooperation of the best and most enlightened men in Java. Even one of them could help us. We wish to form an alliance with our enlightened progressive men, to seek their friendship and after that, their cooperation with us. We are not giving battle to men, but to old moss-grown edicts and conventions that are not worthy of the Javanese of the future. That future of which we and a few others are the forerunners. Throughout all ages, the pioneers in the struggle against tradition have suffered. We know that. Call us mad, foolish, what you will. We cannot help it. It is in our blood. Grandfather was a pioneer half a century ago. He gave his sons and daughters a European education. We have no right to be passive, to do nothing. Adeldum verplicht excelsior. We wish that we could make common cause now with the men of the younger generation. But if we did, we should be distrusted at once. Friendship between unmarried men and men, whether married or not, would not be understood. Later, when we shall have gained our independence, it will be different. My brother knows many progressive young men personally and through correspondence. We know that there are men who appreciate a thinking, educated woman. I heard a man say once, he was a highly placed native official, that the companionship of a woman who was educated and enlightened was a great comfort and support to a man.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alia. And to close today's wonderful event, I would like to invite the Ambassador of Mexico to Indonesia, Ambassador Armando J. Alvarez, over to you.
Thank you, Ibu Mia. Well, just a few words to express that this has been indeed a great event that honored the memory of three giant pioneers of the advancement of women's situation, Sor Juana Ines de la Cruz, Olympe de Gouges, and Ibu Kartini. But also to recognize and praise the work of several contemporary women who continue to advance the unfinished task of achieving full equality between men and women. Among them, I want to mention Dwi Fais from UN Women Indonesia, Elisa Mayer from UNAM, Genevieve from the National Center for Scientific Research, Saras Dewi from Universitas Indonesia, Carmen Lopez Portillo from the Cloister of Sor Juana, Mariam Saint-Pierre, Chargée d'Affaires of France, and my colleague Lisa Ceres, Cultural Attaché of the Embassy of Mexico, and of course, Mia Badib, MC of this event. My most sincere congratulations to all of them, and thank you very much for giving us such a wonderful event. Terima kasih banyak, merci beaucoup, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And in summary, I would like to leave you all with the idea that we all know to be true. When girls and women are supported to reach their full potential, it brings peace and prosperity, not just to their families and communities, but to the entire world. To everybody who has joined us today, thank you so much. Please enjoy your evening. And for those of you fasting during this month of Ramadan, we hope you enjoy your break fasting wherever you are. I'm Mia Badib. It has been an absolute honor on behalf of all our hosts and organizers for today. Thank you again for joining us. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we will all see you again very, very soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Mbak Dwi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Ambassador.
Genevieve.
Thank
Bye,
you, everyone.
Alicia.
Bye. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you all.